How's it going, everyone? My name is Sam with Swellset, and welcome back to the garage. If this is the first video you're seeing of this is actually the final part of the series where we're building this board from scratch. I'm kind of teaching you the process of how I go about doing it. This episode is dedicated to sanding. So we've already shaped it, we've already glassed it, we're ready to go. We're going to start sanding the surfboard. And sanding is easy but also annoying at the same time. We'll get into that and what makes it fun, and what it really allows you to do is dial in the final feel of the board, right? This is the final coat of what you're going to be touching as you surf the surfboard. So it's an important step. So we're going to get it done right. But let's just dive right in and we'll get going. All right, so before we dive in, let's talk about some of the materials that you're going to be using when sanding a surfboard. So first off, the tool itself, right? You can sand a surfboard by hand. I do not recommend it. It takes a long time. Resin is really hard, and it's really hard to kind of get down some of the thicker pieces, like around at the tail, that you really need to get something for some bulk material removal where it might have built up a little bit too much. So you can do it by hand, don't recommend it. Two is just a standard palm sander, which I don't even have one right here. That's what I use for my first surfboard, and that's something that's better than by hand, but it's still not great. The next step up would be like this, is a random orbit sander. It works, again, better than the previous palm sander, but it's still not the best choice. Although this guy, you'll actually at least be able to get across the whole surfboard and do a decent job, but these things just crank through batteries, so you need to have a couple of those. So that's good. The best option is having a sander polisher, like this guy right here. Two-handed, it's got the trigger. This thing is great at removing a lot of material and covering a large surface area of the surfboard, right? I've got an 8-inch flex pad here, which is nice because it's got some give to it, and it'll really kind of get into the grooves of the surfboard as you're sanding it. So this is what I would recommend. It's like a $200-ish tool. Sorry, I'm caught up. This one's like $200, but you can easily spend $300, $400, $500 on one. Just if you have one, great. If you don't, make do with what you've got around you. But again, just the more you spend on a tool like this, the quicker, more efficient you can get done with this process. Now looking at sandpaper. Sandpaper, you need a lot for a surfboard. Just getting straight to the point. You need a bunch. Depending on where you are in the process, you're going to need a lot of different grits. So to start, this board is just finished hot coat. I'm going to personally do a gloss coat on this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a 150 or 200 grit and just kind of rough sand everything to prep for my gloss coat. However, if you're just taking this to finish from this step, you'll probably want to start at like a 300, 350 grit and then work your way up to probably around 600. And then for a gloss though, you're gonna, after the gloss is finished, you're gonna start at like a 400 and work your way up from there to 1,000 and plus a polishing set. So you need a lot of sandpaper. Ultimately, what you need is a couple circles of 200, 250, and then working your way up to 400 to 600 for your first surfboard. That'll work just fine. It'll get you a good finish that you're looking for, and you can kind of make sure that you remove all the scratches along the way. All right, so like I mentioned, with this board, I'm going to do a gloss coat on it. So for this first sand, I'm just going to rough sand everything at 220 grit. That way I can get into the spin boxes and get those flat and flush, and then just give everything a nice even sand. Get rid of any bumps of fiberglass or whatever else I might have on here. So that's going to be the goal with this one. I'm not going to show too much of it because it's like 100 degrees in my garage. I'm going to be dripping in sweat, which is gross already. And then also I don't want my camera to overheat. And then finally I'm going to open up some doors and the lighting's going to be trash. So that's what's going to happen. Once we get to the next step after the gloss of where I sand and polish it, I'll make sure to do that at a time where I can show the whole process of going up and down the board. Key things to keep in mind is you'll probably have some buildup of resin here on the tail. So you want to make sure that those are nice and flush and flat, and that it's an even transition across the whole board. And then another trick I'll show you when I get to it on the gloss coat as well. But on the rails here, you will end up with a little bit of a lip where the two layers of resin met, right? And there's a really easy trick to get that down to flush, so you don't have to just work your hand and sandpaper like crazy to get it flat, where you just scrape it with a razor blade. So I'll show that to you. I'll also have you'll probably have seen it just now. I'll grab the camera and show you while I'm talking. So you can see what I'm talking about, but I'll get started. But like I said, I'm gonna turn off the camera here in a minute and get some airflow because I'm dying already. All right, everyone, we're back. It's probably been like 30 seconds for you, but it's been like 3 weeks for me. So sorry if there's a little bit of disjoint here. But gloss coat is finished. It's been cured. It's been cured for a little while now. But we're gonna finally, today's the day, we're gonna finish off this board, ready to go, post it online for sale, or go surf it, whatever you're gonna do, right? Board's gonna be done today. So what's next, right? So I got a gloss coat on here. We'll get into a few things, but first I'm just gonna talk through my sanding schedule, how I do things. So I like to start off, especially on a gloss coat, I start off with 400 grit. I don't want to remove any material, essentially no material. I want to just kind of get everything down to flat and get the gloss finish off of it, right? Because we're going to add that back as we polish it, but we need to get all these little bumps and grooves and all that other stuff out of it first. So start off with 400 grit. Depending on how well I did on the rails, I'll drop down to like a 220 or like a 320 grit on the rails, just because those are really big problem spots where you get some resin buildup. So I'll probably do that here because my gloss is kind of old and I can feel some things here. So 400 on the deck, 400 on the bottom, 300-ish, 320 on the rails or so. And then from there, you just move up the grits, right? So I'll go from 400, I'll go to 600, then I'll go to 800. Because this is a gloss, I'm gonna do 1,000, and I think I even have some 1,200, I'm not sure. But those will be, from 800 plus, I'll be wet sanding, maybe even 600, no, I think 600 will be dry. But 800 plus will be wet sanding. Wet sanding is great, keeps everything from getting clogged very much, which is nice. And then I have some surfboard polish, which we'll do afterwards. But that's the idea. The technique that we'll use can be varying, right? The biggest thing to keep in mind when you're sanding a surfboard, never stop moving the sander, right? I got this guy. It's spinning at, right now I've got it set to like 1600 RPM right now. If I stop at any moment, that's gonna rip a groove into the board, right? And that's exactly what you don't want. So try and keep the sander flat as possible and always be moving back and forth, right? You get a really nice little rocking flow. If you have kids, you know exactly what this feeling is like when you're trying to rock them to sleep. But just never keep the sander from stop moving, right? Always keep it moving. Biggest thing to keep in mind. And there, you're probably still gonna have some burn throughs. If it's a personal board, it's not that big of a deal. You can always refill them with whatever you might have laying around, Solarized or whatever it may be. But I've been talking too much. Let's throw some sandpaper on. I'm gonna grab my AirPods and a mask because sanding is not good for your lungs. And let's finish off this board. All right, I think I'm sufficiently dusty for this first round. That's always the hardest part for me, is getting out all the little grooves and waves that you might have in your gloss coat or bumps and anything else. Just see a couple more here in the light I need to get out really quick. But from here, I'm going to move on to, I'll 400 the rails really fast because I just did that with a 320, like I said. So I'll 400 the rails, and I'm going to move on to 600. And what's nice about this is that you have a flat surface now, which is what you want. And now it's just about removing the scratches from the previous grit. And so in my earlier days, I used to go back through this really fast, and you'd still see the scratches from the earlier grits. So take your time, go slowly. I mean, move fast still, obviously, so you don't get burn throughs, but make sure you take your time on each side and on the rails to make sure that you get rid of all of the scratches from the previous grit, and then we'll move up. So I'll do 600, and then I'm going to switch over to wet sanding at 800, and we'll go to there. All right, we are on to 800 grit, which is exciting. I like wet sanding a lot more. It's just, for whatever reason, it's easier for me. But 800, 1,000, polished, all that's left. We're getting close. I just, when I wet sand things, I just cover the thing in water. I find it easier, especially because it's covered in fiberglass dust right now. So you really, to get through that layer, you really kind of have to soak it in. So I just go around making sure that the whole thing is wet, especially with how hot my garage is. About halfway through, it'll dry up, and then I'll get some more splashes of water on here just to make sure that it stays wet and it gets a nice clean finish. But as I'm putting this on here, I can already feel it's nice. So getting up to that 800 and 1,000 grit is really going to help it out. Just feel really good. So go ahead and do that. We're going to do the same thing we've been doing, just power sand the top and bottom, hand sand the rails, just because I don't trust myself on the rails, because I don't want to break a board at this late in the stage. So we're going to do that. Then we're going to crack out the polish. So see you in a few minutes, and a lot more dust later. Which that is another bright side about wet sanding, is because you're not throwing dust up into the air. You probably should still wear a mask, but it's too hot in here. And so I'm going to go maskless, because most of it will just get thrown as dots across my garage floor and onto all these other boards here. So yep, should be a good time. All right, so I needed to charge the batteries in my camera, so you didn't get to see me do 1,000 grit, but 1,000 grit, done sanding, cool. Least favorite part of the board is finished. Now it's on to final polish. You didn't miss anything other than I swapped out the pad on my sanders polisher set to a foam pad with just like this is supposed to be like a wool or something like that, but it's a synthetic fabric on there for polishing. And it's pretty straightforward. I have this fiberglass polish number 2 from my surf supply store. They only sell it in the gallon, which is kind of crazy because it'll take me a long time to use all this, but it works good. I like it. So just put some on there, probably dampen the pad a little bit, and then just polish away. There's nothing too crazy about it. One thing to be careful with this step in particular is because it's hard to polish by hand, right? You're going to use the polisher for the whole thing. Getting down to the rails can be a bit tough, so be careful. As that thing is spinning fast, it can just grab the board and chuck it off your racks. So be very careful on the rails in particular, but just have at it and you're almost there. You're almost ready to surf this thing. And just like that, we're done. If this is your first board, congratulations. Go surf it. Have fun. Don't ding it. There's a curse. Either when you finish a surfboard, either you ding it on the first session or there's no waves for weeks. So hopefully neither of those happen to you. But I'm super pleased with how this turned out. It's a really solid board. It looks great. Things turned out not the way I anticipated it, but I love it. I'm super excited for it. Whoever gets this one is going to be stoked. I'm really pleased with how the leash, the fin rope, not fin rope, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a leash plug. I can't think of words right now. Words. You know, the place where you attach your leash, the leash loop. Fiberglass loop, leash loop, whatever. That turned out really nicely. It's a little flat, and so it might slice a fin rope. Hopefully not, but we should be good. Especially if you attach the leash itself instead of using a string. If you attach the leash itself to it, it should be solid. But yeah, it's super fun. Building surfboards is great. Sanding is hard, but just keep that sander moving, and you'll do great. The polish turned out really well. It's not like a full mirror polish. I think you need more steps, more higher grits, get up to like 2,000 grit before polishing to really achieve that. But it looks really good. I'm really excited for it. And this board, I kind of hinted towards it. This board is for sale. It'll probably be sold by the time this video goes live, at least hopefully. I don't want to sit in my garage for that long. But follow me on Instagram. I'll post all these on Instagram. If you're in Southern California, they'll probably end up on OfferUp or Marketplace or wherever else. So keep your eyes open for my stuff. And I hope you enjoyed following along this process. Building boards is fun. It's dirty, it's sweaty, it's hot, especially when you're in this garage, but it's really exciting. And to be able to surf a craft that you build yourself from the ground up, it's a great feeling. And that's why I still have this orange guy right here is my first board I ever made. Still in the racks. I'll take it out every once in a while, but it's super fun. So enjoy the process. Hopefully you enjoyed this little series that I made making it. And I'd appreciate it if you drop a subscribe, follow, like, whatever, comment, ask questions. I don't know. Do those YouTuber things and help it, share it with your friends. I don't know. What do they say? Click the bell, ring notifications, whatever that is. Cool. I'm just rambling now, so hopefully you've clicked off by now. But stay stoked. Bye.